It's almost here, the biggest fight in Combate America's history, coming to McAllen, Texas on December the 7th. UFC Hall of Famer Tito Ortiz taking on former WWE champion Alberto El Patron. Make sure you check it out on pay-per-view. You do not want to miss this. The man who put this all together, Campbell McLaren. You did it. I mean, this was a long time coming.
This was a long time coming. Actually, Alberto and I have had this idea for a while. We just needed to find the right opponent. And timing is, to a great extent, everything in the fight business. And I think Tito is ready for this. Alberto's ready for this. You know, the real issue is, how ready is Alberto? Because I think people are totally underestimating his ability to stand up against Tito, who's really the Mike Tyson of MMA, right? He's a killer, he's a slugger, he's a brawler, he gets in there, he does the ground and pound. And I think everyone thinks Alberto is just going to get killed. I mean, not lose, like actually destroyed.
As I've learned more about Alberto, to me the gap is closed, at least in my mind.
In the world of wrestling, even though there are scripted outcomes, the physicality is very rough. And the injury level in professional wrestling is maybe even higher than in MMA. So here you have a guy that is physically been through it all. The question for Alberto was, is he mentally ready to get back into La Jaula? And is he mentally ready to face Tito Ortiz? And the thing that convinced me he is, the thing that made me think I've got a real fight here, not a stunt, not a gimmick, a real fight, is I offered Alberto a tune-up fight. And he said, no, I want Tito. I was like, damn, okay. For many, many years when I started the UFC, boxing looked down on MMA, or the UFC. And the UFC always looked down on wrestling. And in Combate, what we have done is bring in boxers into Combate and to bring in professional wrestlers, because they're great athletes, and bring them in and celebrate them inside our sport. CM Punk, who has balls as big as the great outdoors, went into the UFC, and he went in and he got the crap kicked out of him. And I think you have to give him respect for taking that kind of fight. However, to a lot of MMA fans, that showed wrestling is bullshit. And I think what Alberto has to do is what Brock Lesnar did, which is bring back the honor and the fear of the wrestling athlete.
Is this something we should be getting used to? Starting to just blur those lines?
I think, you know, in some ways that's less of a sports question and more of a business question.
That's part of the reason we want to chat with you here.
You have to be entertaining, right? And I think that much as I love MMA, I am oftentimes bored with the entrances, the stage presence, how MMA athletes conduct themselves separately from their athletic competition. And I do think this is entertainment, and I think boxing has long understood this. Floyd Mayweather, who arguably is the best boxer of all time, boring, but technically best. Sorry, Floyd, what's true is true.
Still a big draw?
A huge draw. Yeah. By the way, Floyd, I want my money back from the fight of the century, because I went and it was $2,000 a seat, and that was not the fight of the century. That was the ripoff of the century.
Do you have your
receipt?
I
want my money back.
Do you have your receipt?
Oh yeah, that'll do it. Floyd, here's the receipt. Anyway, but a great showman, right? Money Mayweather, right? Knows how to do that. So I think what we can do in merging these two and bringing in Thunder Rosa and bringing in Dulce is...
You also have Amanda Serrano, a boxer in there, so you see this, yeah.
Yeah, so I think we are merging, but the idea is to be more entertaining. We want people to know, if you watch Combate, you turn on the TV and you see Combate, I want everybody to know it's Combate. That's the goal. And so I think what we have is a super interesting mix. We have put together a lot of different flavors, and it's blending beautiful.
This is a project you started really with very little resources, and now you have two good big-time television partners. You have a ever-growing stable of fighters that people are getting recognizable. You have a pay-per-view on the way as well. So what were the things you did well that you look back on and say, this got us from point A to the point we are now in a much more favorable marketplace?
Wow, Max.
Was that a good question?
That's a really good question.
It was a bit lengthy.
I think what we have done well is source exciting new talent. I think our fighters, they're very young because we need to sign people not under contract to other organizations. But I think the fight team, Micah Framowitz and Eduardo Vargas and Tony Padilla, I think they've done a great job of sourcing the best new athletes who I think in 2-3 years are going to be dominating the sport. I think we've also done an exceptional job at bringing in a new audience to MMA.
When you say new fans, you're talking about people who have never seen MMA.
The truth of the matter is, for a lot of young people, particularly in the Hispanic audience in the US, that they might watch boxing, they might watch WWE, but they hadn't tuned in to Bellator or the UFC. It didn't strike a chord with them. And we have found that if you mix in some boxing, you mix in some, Mexican-style wrestling, and maybe have the mariachi band play the national anthem, you've got kind of a cool mix.
Yeah. Let's talk about this card. December the 7th, down there in South Texas. It's on pay-per-view.
It's actually North Mexico.
Well, if you look, it's crazy because if you look at McAllen, Texas, maybe 200 miles.
It's less than that.
Okay, it's 100 miles of Mexico above it.
There's an old New England saying, good fences make good neighbors. I'm not against that. A fence is okay. But I think if you think of walls, here's what I think of walls. Look to the Bible. The walls come tumbling down. A lot of people hate us, Like the U.S. is a lot of people hate us. We don't need our next door neighbor to be in that category. So we've always emphasized the point where the U.S. and the Mexico touch. And doing it in McAllen just brings that out even more. So I want to celebrate the differences in people, but I want to celebrate the shared parts of our culture. Let's all get together and enjoy a good fight, Eat some tacos, watch some good fights. That's Combate. Tito Ortiz is an amazing athlete. He's a great guy. He's a really good man. He's a good father. I can't tell you how much I respect him. But if you want to make some money, bet on Alberto.
Whoa. Is that your pick?
I can't bet. This is not right for a promoter to do that.
December 7th.
December 7th.
Tito versus Alberto.
What side are you on?
Yes.
I think that this is going to be an epic fight. And it's because these two men have decided to make this a crowning moment for their legendary career.
The biggest card in Combate America's history, Tito versus Alberto. I think you've heard everything you need to hear. Don't miss it.
Tito versus Alberto. Available on pay-per-view.